Hey, how you doing? This is Brian Shanley, and this is my video blog on my YouTube channel. This particular list is called Brian James Shanley Raw. It's where I spit the truth about today's issues from a Christian perspective, with no holds barred. I just tell it like it is and let the dominoes fall where they may. Not trying to appease this person or this person, just trying to tell the truth. Because I'm in the middle of multiple projects, both personally, business-wise, as well as creatively, I had zero plans to touch this show for the rest of the year, as in 2019 wasn't going to do it again. However, sometimes world events and current issues leave us no other alternative. And when you're one of the truth tellers, the people look to you to say, hey, what are you going to tell us about such and such a subject? And on this date, which is October the 2nd, 2019, dateline out of Dallas, Texas, police officer by the name of Amber Guyger is given a 10-year sentence for murder. Very briefly, before this jackass in the corporate-owned media complex and this jackass in USA Today and New York Times, before I read anyone else's thoughts on the issue, because I don't really care what they have to say anyway, I'll just tell it to you like it is. Every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. And on that basis, from the moment of conception, they have intrinsic dignity and value and beauty and significance and worth, immeasurably more so than the most valuable asset that you could ever think of, that you could ever hold in your hand. The human being, on the basis of being created in the image of God, is far more valuable. Whether he has a job, whether he doesn't have a job, black, white, red, yellow, there's nothing that acquires this value. It's there by virtue of being created in the image of God. So obviously Genesis 9:6 tells us that if somebody sheds the blood of one of the image bearers of God, their blood should be shed. The idea is that God so cares about human life that if you harm or injure his creation and his image, his position is he's angry, and it has to be dealt with. This Amber Guyger from the Dallas police, and every time I think of the Dallas police, I think of the John F. Kennedy assassination. I don't know how to separate the two. These are the people who either very relaxed, allowed it to happen, or possibly definitely participated in the cover-up. That's another story. I'm being conspiracy brother. Back to the issue at hand. So this Dallas police officer, and every officer is an employee of the state, okay? But they are serving at the pleasure of and with the consent of the taxpayers and the voters. In other words, they're to protect and to serve. It's not the people who serve the police, it's the police that are supposed to serve the people. I say that because I know more than one police officer has that backwards, and I had to speak the truth. And if there's a police officer listening who's confused, I had to bring you back to reality. Many police officers have felt an unqualified entitlement to walk around in lawlessness and murder and dishonesty, thinking that they'll never be called to account. And if they're ever put on the hot seat, I've got the public sector big labor union that's going to bring them into arbitration to keep my job. When there's no fear of consequences, all of a sudden you feel the license to do some stuff that a normal checks and balances would stop you from doing. There's no restraint. The chains are taken off and the evil comes out. So this lady, we don't know if she was drunk or what. She's a police officer, and she lives in an apartment. She thinks she's going into her apartment, but she's going to the unit that's on the floor directly beneath her by mistake. She walks in, and it's someone else's apartment, but she thinks it's hers. Since she sees another person in what she thinks is her apartment, she thinks she's being burglarized. She doesn't call for backup. She shoots the person dead. Okay. Turns out it's a 26-year-old straight shooter, decent man, accountant, professional, never harmed a person, and did not deserve somebody who is paid with his taxes. Just think, his taxes paid her salary, medical, dental, vision, other benefits, pension, and parking, and God knows what else, and that of her family. And she walked into his place, his domicile, with a badge, with a gun, with a baton, with a taser, with everything, tyrannically, accident or not. She had no legal entree to be in that place. And she murders him. And his blood from the carpet cries out for justice. It must be avenged in a system of justice. And the taxpayers and the voters in a Western society, it's very important that they have some kind of public confidence in the integrity and the honesty of the institutions that are put in place to protect them and to give them justice. So when an officer kills one of them, it's already disgusting. But when the system of justice doesn't prosecute, which happens a lot of the time, if people don't get justice inside of the system, they seek justice outside of the system. That's why you see problems between the citizenry and the police very much, because the police get away with murder. This time was different because she was actually being prosecuted in a criminal manner. And that's great. That's a step in the right direction. And she was found guilty unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty, by her peers after an examination of the evidence in which she was afforded the right to confront and cross-examine every witness. So it was the justice system at its finest until sentencing. You see, if you have a son or someone you care about and they're minding their business, they're figuring out how they're going to pay the rent and cook dinner, and someone busts in their house and kills them, well, the murderer, in like manner, should get the death penalty. And if you're mega liberal and you don't believe in the death penalty, then at least they should never see the light of day. They've killed someone with no just reason. We just now learned this lady's going to get 10 years. And if you know the transformation since the 1960s in our prison system, it's no longer called a penal institution, as in you're not going there to be penalized, to pay for your crimes. It's now the Department of Corrections. The wording is very important. Don't let that get past you. All right? It's no longer we're punishing people, but we're correcting their behavior to reform them and put them back out there. That's what they've done to the prison system, and that's why we have the problems that we have in terms of lawlessness. Because at the end of the day, there is no ultimate penalty. So this lady, instead of getting the death penalty, instead of getting, 100 years, or she's got 10 years. And if you know anything about the system, if she's a model prisoner, she might do 6 of those years, which means she'll be walking the streets again. All she has to do is move to another place where they've never heard of her, and she'll still be in somewhat the prime of her life. The person she murdered will never be in the prime of his life. The family that loved him will never have him back. So it is a gross miscarriage of justice on the one hand, because the penalty does not even come close to the crime. On the other hand, it's a step in the right direction, because for the first time in a while, a police officer has been called to account and told, you're not above the law. So it's a step in the right direction. And for every person who's been denied justice by the system that's supposed to give them justice, this gives a little bit of satisfaction that she was convicted. The fact that the sentence is so weak is horrible. And it's going to produce anger. It's going to produce outrage. And it's going to produce people pointing out the disproportionality of the sentencing. Did she get a break because she's white, because she's a chick, because she is a police officer? When it came time, did the prosecutor, say, oh, it's a police, we work with the police all the time. Did someone call in a favor? Something out of whack has happened here to where the murdered is not getting the justice that he deserves, at least on this side of the grave. When the Messiah returns and tells him to come forth, that young man is going to get up in a body that's incapable of being shot. And if his trust was in Jesus, it'll be, heaven. If his trust was not in Jesus, then it will be the other side. But on this side of the grave, the people are being denied justice, the taxpayers, the citizens of Texas, the citizens of Dallas. And if you don't give them justice in the court, they're going to take justice outside of the court. And you don't have the right to be upset because you left them no choice. So that's my take. The 10-year sentence is a slap in the face. If it was my son and my son got murdered in his living room and the person who did it only got 10 years, of which I know they're going to do 6 or 7 max, I would feel like it is the official position of the government that I pay for that my son's life was cheap and worthless. And I would be disgusted, and you would not hear the end of me on that issue until I felt that the scales were properly balanced. And so I think that as this is discussed further by other people, particularly if anyone's borrowing any of my ideas because I'm out here first, I think you're going to see people really disgusted. Happy on the one side, disgusted on the other. Happy there was a conviction, sad that this man's life was worth less than 10 years. Very disappointing. That's my take. God bless and keep you and your families, and I'll see you another time.